So good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Biz Talk, the Black Business Development and Economic Empowerment Talk Show. My name is Ade Shakoya, and this show is brought to you by CirQulate. CirQulate represents or aims to increase the amount of times and the length of time that money stays within the Black community, supporting Black Pound Day, supporting Black economic growth, and everything to do with that. Now, back after a week off, so sorry I wasn't here last week, but yeah, for personal reasons, just wasn't here. In reality, wasn't needed a break. There you go. That's what it was, right? Sometimes we need a break. And me and actually my guest right now, we're just talking about that offline, the importance of rest, especially if you're somebody who's trying to build a business or make a difference in whatever way. Rest is important. And that's a new discipline that I'm trying to learn. I've got it on my agenda for 2021. But hey, we'll see what happens. But enough about all of that. Right now, I'm honored to have on the show somebody who is doing a lot of stuff within the community and globally at different levels. And it's an honor to have him on the show. And you'll see why once the conversation unfolds. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Julian Hall. Hey, Julian, thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi, Ade. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for coming along. I really appreciate it. But before we get into the crux of this conversation, can I ask you to quickly introduce yourself to those who may be listening and watching right now?
Sure. So my name is Julian Hall, otherwise known as the Ultrapreneur, and I am the founder and CEO of a 5-year-old social enterprise called Ultra Education, and also the founder of a newly launched tech startup called Ask Ultra. Both organizations teach entrepreneurship, one in a face-to-face live environment and one via a mobile app powered by artificial intelligence. And really my mission is to ensure that all children have access to effective entrepreneurial education, particularly those who suffer disadvantage due to race, due to economic class, due to the postcode or the household that they've been raised in. Because it's benefited me a whole lot, and I want to give back. I want to give the gift that keeps giving, which I believe is entrepreneurship.
Awesome. I love that, the gift that keeps giving. And I love some of the things you said there. One of the things that really resonated with me is the wanting to give back, the focusing on young children in terms of entrepreneurship, and we'll be discussing that as part of this conversation, but also tech startup. So I'm very much interested in tech startups. I work with lots of tech startups, but also organizations that acquire some of these tech startups. So that's one of my areas of great interest. And so I'm sure we'll have some interesting conversation around that. So awesome. So as an entrepreneur, here's my first question to you. What inspired you originally to get into entrepreneurship?
It was the realization that I could make money based on a creative idea, based on something that was meaningful to me, that I could generate revenue and I could repeat that cycle. And that started when I was 18, in a 1-bedroom flat in Stonebridge with some friends of mine. We came up with an idea for a fashion label. We were solving the problem of being able to dress cool, but not having to spend the earth. And, my girlfriend at the time, she was a graduate from the London College of Fashion. And we used her skills, we bolted some entrepreneurial drive behind it, and we created a fashion label in Harlesden back in the mid-90s. And it worked. It was a problem that we solved. It was repeatable. It was profitable. And that was really when I was bitten by that entrepreneurial bug in it. And I realized that I can apply that to other problems that I encountered, or I saw other people encountered, or that were gaps in the market.
So I noticed you used the word problem a number of times, right? Entrepreneurs recognize that actually to build a business, a scalable business that's potentially going to be profitable, you need to find a problem. Do you want to speak to that a bit more? Why is it important to identify a real problem and come up with a solution to?
Yes, a good question. And I guess at heart, I am a tech-powered entrepreneur. My background's been in tech. My first love was tech. And so being in the tech community, I apply tech principles to almost everything that I do. And in fact, when we started teaching kids entrepreneurship, I applied the lean startup principle to show them how they can start a business and start thinking about it. And I guess in more recent years, and you'll know this, Ade, that over the last couple of decades, the tech community has funded so many businesses which really, didn't solve a problem. And if they did, maybe it was light touch. And people might think, well, why is that important? Well, it's because if you're not really solving a meaningful problem to enough people, then the investors aren't going to get their money back. So after about a decade of realizing this, tech entrepreneurs, because it costs so much money, there's so much time and effort that goes into creating and launching tech. What the community has realized is, let's boil it down to solving a problem for a particular audience, and then a large enough audience that it can make some meaningful investment and kind of commercial sense. So that's how I think about things. And even today, I was feeding back on a class of about 15 students on their business idea, and they had an idea to upcycle jewelry from metal spoons. And I asked them the same question. I said, what problem are you solving? And they said, well, it's the problem of sustainability, right? Of being kind to the environment, of not having waste going to the oceans and choking the baby turtles, right? It was an environmental problem that they were solving, right? And for me that was important, because unless you understand that you're solving a problem, we use the word problem, but the solution to a problem is value. If there's enough value, people will pay for it. So, when our facilitators, when they're working with kids, and again, we start at 7 years old, even just this evening, we had 20 kids on a Zoom with about 4 facilitators. Our facilitators are always asking, what problem are you solving, for who, and how are you going to be different, right? If you want to make t-shirts, why you? What's going to be your niche, right? If you want designs, why the design special? How is it going to resonate? What value are you going to add? So I take all of that learning from the tech community, because I think that they spent so long trying to get it right. They've come up with this approach to business that I think can be applied to kids businesses, to social businesses, to whatever it might be. And that is bleeding into other industries. So even things like, this whole idea of problem solving or design thinking or lean startup is now being applied across industries, but it started with the tech industry. So for me, ultimately, and this was no more pertinent than at the beginning of lockdown, and it was, I had colleagues and peers and other businesses that I've been mentoring saying, Julian, it's lockdown, it's pandemic, what do I do? And I said, call up your clients and your customers and ask them, what problems do they have now? What's keeping them awake at night? And if you can solve that problem, they will pay you some money for it. Whether it's a school, whether it's an investor, whether it's a council, whether it's a consumer, what issue are they facing right now? Yeah. And if you can do something to help them, you might have the makings of a product and a service. And if you can repeat it, you might have the makings of a business.
I love what you said there, and I love the fact that you brought in design thinking. And similarly, like I said, I come from an agile background, which also uses lean startup design thinking. And one of the key aspects there is also constantly trying to identify what the problem is in small bites and go through iterations to identify it. It came from the software industry, but right now it's prolific, it's everywhere, it's in all areas of life. It's just the ways of working. I also love the fact that you said there that when people are contacting you, you're telling them what keeps your customers awake at night, because people will pay for that. Prime example is like, I remember a few years ago, I had an infected tooth. Silly me didn't go to the dentist in time. One night, it really caught me. I'm on the floor, grown man, crying. 3 o'clock. I phoned Harley Street. I need my tooth out, help. They gave me a bill. They told me how much it was. On a good day, I'd be like, you're crazy. I was in so much pain at that moment in time. They solved my problem. And I'm coming down there. I went down and I paid them. Right? I didn't even flinch, because I would have paid 10 times that amount just to get rid of that pain. Right? And it was expensive. It was about 700 quid just to have a tooth taken out. Do you know what I mean? So I hear you on that one. Pain is important. And maybe we'll get a bit more around to that later on. Now, okay, so you're a serial, would it be fair to say you're a serial entrepreneur?
That's correct, yeah.
Cool. Your first business idea. How did it go? How did you? Was that the one that you spoke about in the Stonebridge?
Correct. So I'd tell you the story. I was looking at a music video. It was TLC, and it had an artist called Left Eye who was wearing a spray painted dungaree. And I looked at it and I thought, wow, that looks really cool. But the problem was that we couldn't buy that. So, and it wasn't just what Left Eye wore from TLC, it was what most of the entertainers, the rappers, the singers back in the mid-90s over here, if we saw what they wore, we probably couldn't buy it in the shops, right? It wasn't accessible. The only way we could access it is if somebody made it. I was sitting next to my girlfriend who made clothes, and I said, how much do you think it would cost to make that spray painted dungaree? And she said it might cost £20. But I knew I could sell it for £100, right? Because the problem then was the lack of availability of cool clothes, and the aspiration for people to want to look good because they wanted to feel good, right? And mainly, and we know now that young black men and women from low-income backgrounds, because we don't have the social mobility, we gravitate to material things to help ourselves feel good for the moment, right? And so underlying that, and really I was solving a problem for myself because I wanted that spray painted dungaree, right? Sure. And so I knew if I could get it for a low price, I know other people would want it, and that's how the label started.
Great stuff, awesome. What type of challenges did you face along the way?
Good question. It was mainly about it was hard work because we'd come up with the designs, we'd go and get the fabric, we'd make them, we'd go and sell them. So there was a benefit to being part of all of the each stage of that kind of process. But it was also a lot of really hard work. The margins were low, and you soon realized that you can only really make a lot of money unless it was just the one person doing it, by selling in volume, right? So you might make, you might double up your money, but after you spend time, time and effort driving around, marketing, all the rest of it, you've probably just covered your costs, right? And it was only 10, 15 years later when mentors came on the scene that I realized that actually you should be making hundreds of % profit in something like that unless you're doing it at scale, which is what the businesses like Pretty Little Thing and Misguided and Primark, when they do fashion, the reason why they can make money out of it is because they're doing it at scale. So the unit economics work out really, really well. So I guess even though it was something that we were passionate about, kept us out of trouble for a couple of summers, it was difficult to scale it because we didn't have the investment to be able to do it wholesale.
Okay, so another keyword that you've been using, which I really like there, is repeatable. And then you've also been using the word scale. For me, I connect the two together. Why is scaling, or the potential for scaling, very important to a business that wants to be sustainable?
So earlier on in my entrepreneurial career, it was about, okay, how much can I make in the week? And then it was, can I pay my rent? And then it was, can I pay my bills? And then it was, can I make enough money to go on holiday and buy a car? And so it was very me-centric, right? But then when I got past the point of being able to make enough money for me to sustain myself, I thought, now I need to actually get more people on board. I need some help here. So I need to hire people. I need to get an office. I need to get insurance. I need to put some money behind marketing, and now I want to release a book, so I've got to print that, and now I want to, market myself at an exhibition. That's going to cost a few grand. So I quickly realized that the model where I was effectively exchanging time for money, so even though I was working for myself, I'm still actually I've just created a job for myself, right? And so my ability to generate revenue was limited to my time, and I could do maybe 80 hours a week. I mean, when you're young, you can do that, right? But even then, it becomes difficult. And at that point, now if I'm doing 80 hours a week, the only increment that could increase my earning potential was how much I charged per hour or per day, and even that would hit a limit. It takes time for that kind of stuff to increase in value. And so I realized that the solution to all of that was to remove myself as the central mechanism for being able to generate revenue. And so I had to bring other people on board and leverage other people's time. And that's when I kind of went into my entrepreneurial 2.0 mode, when I was able to, develop an arbitrage model by hiring freelancers and other people to do work for me. And I would, make a margin on top of their work. And, so now I was able to scale a little bit more. But then I realized that you need lots of people to do that in order to scale even more. But that's when I, and that's when the internet boom happened around 2000. That was the makings of people actually leveraging technology, not just to, go on the internet and watch YouTube or access emails, whatever, but to actually scale a business, right? To take business functions that you could repeat without the need of a human being, and you could leverage platforms, whether you're leveraging social networks, whether you're leveraging media networks, to amplify your voice. Yeah, and that became really exciting to me because, the tech platforms meant that you could leverage the same kind of effort 10, 100, 1,000 times more than a human being, right? And so for me, when now you started to hear in the mid to late 2000s about all these companies becoming unicorns and IPOing in the stock market, I realized that actually it's because it wasn't because they had 1 million people, right? Airbnb has maybe less than 10% of the employees that the biggest hotelier in the world will have, but they make more money, and it's because you can leverage tech to get a lot of. So for me, that's why I say scale. And it's scale because we have the availability of tech to be able to do that. It's a great use of it. But it also means that you can spend your time doing creative things as opposed to repetitive things, right? And that's for me where the human potential lies. It's in creative endeavors as opposed to just breaking rocks and repeating that process to try and draw revenue.
Awesome. I think you touched on something really, really, really important there. That's really close to my heart as well. So I'm just going to see if I can quickly pull this up and share it with our audience. So this is what we call the cash flow quadrant. Don't get too hung up about that. But in effect, what Julian was just talking about is this quadrant here, self-employed. A lot of times we start an idea, we think it's a business, but it's actually fully dependent on us as individuals, which means we have to still trade our time for money, right? And depending on the size of that business and how quickly it grows, and depending on how repeatable you can create the right systems to go with it, after a while, that can actually become a burden. It's like, oh my gosh, I've created myself extra work here. So really the real goal is how do we quickly, as entrepreneurs, move from this quadrant of self-employed into that business owner quadrant. Now, I'm sure there's many different models out there that represent that, but that's kind of the essence of looking at how do we actually identify we've got a business. And number one, is it scalable as well? Is it scalable? Do we have enough customers? Or is it a seasonal type of business? Or am I going to run out of it? Or is it a friends and type business who buy every so often, and versus actually, can I get more people? Can I replicate this to get more people? Can I pull in the data, the metrics that will help me to expand? Based on your journey and the work that you do, if you was to boil success in business down to one thing, what would you say it is?
Happiness.
Okay. What does that mean?
So when I was younger, growing up, and this is the pitch that's given to most young people, and that is, if you do well in school, you go to college, university, you get your grades, you get your degree, you go and find a good job, you make some good money, you buy a house, you got enough money for holidays and nice things, and then you'll be happy. That is currently what young people are sold on. That's the motivation. That's the thing that adults are saying, you got to make money, got to get a good job because you've got to be able to buy a house and buy a car and, feed your family and do all the rest of it, right? But it's not true. It's not true. And we know it's not true because we know of millionaires and billionaires and celebrities and entrepreneurs who are the very opposite of happy, right? we know, you and I know, that in the entrepreneurial community, there are very successful entrepreneurs in the last, 10 years who each year you hear about really successful entrepreneurs committing suicide, facing depression. It's a real issue. And it's because we are chasing the wrong thing. So psychologists will tell you that, the human psyche puts us in a place where it's never enough. So if you are a thousandaire, you want to become a millionaire. You're a millionaire, you want to become a multimillionaire. You're a multimillionaire, you want to become a billionaire. Then you want to become a multi-billionaire. It's never enough. We never had enough stuff, right? I remember when a friend of mine, really into cars, this must have been 10, 15 years ago, his car was in the garage. He had a really nice car, might have been a Maserati or something, and they gave him a Ferrari, a kind of a 430, I believe it was. As whilst his Maserati was in the garage, right? So anyway, so he came to check me in this Ferrari, and he said, Jules, come, let's go take a spin. So we took a spin in his car, and it was exhilarating and stuff. But after about 5 minutes, I thought, is that it? Like, is this because the Ferrari is the iconic beacon of success, right? You got the watch, you got the car, you got the clothes, you got all the trappings of success. And I was in the car, and it was fun. And I thought, is that it? Like, this cannot be the reason why entrepreneurs and people are working. It can't just be for that. Because if it's just for that, then it's a waste of time. Because, I call it, it's exciting, it's fleeting, but it's not genuine happiness, right? And I know multimillionaires and people who you look on the outside, they're super successful, but actually what they want is a happier family life, is they want a stable relationship, they want good health, they want good relationships with family and friends. And this is actually why I came up with this idea of entrepreneurship, yeah? And it was the idea that it was really about holistic entrepreneurship. And it was to say to kids and young people that, the ultimate measure of success is happiness. Because if you're not happy, then nothing else really matters. Yeah, money isn't going to make you happy. Material things won't make you happy. All of these things that you're promised won't make you happy, right? Now, what's that got to do with entrepreneurship? We define an entrepreneur to a child and to anyone as someone who does what they love and they make money from it. And the philosophy behind that is this: most people hate their jobs. I don't mean dislike, I mean hate their jobs. Yeah, I know people who have become sick because of their jobs, right? Who have mental health and physical health problems because of their jobs, right? Now, entrepreneurs, on the other hand, seem to love what they're doing, right? Not all the time, but they're often driven by a passion, yeah? And that doesn't mean it's easy, but it's a bit like playing a sport. You might really love football or boxing or swimming or whatever it might be. Whilst you're playing it, it's still hard, but you're really enjoying it. I kind of take that analogy and apply it to entrepreneurship. And for me, if you are spending the majority of your life working, because the majority of people will spend the lion's share of their life working, if you're doing something that you enjoy or something that you love, then you're more likely to have a happier life overall, right? You're more likely to be happier. That's going to impact family, friends, loved ones, etc. And for me, that's one of the measures, because people can say, well, why don't you just have a hobby? Hobbies don't pay your bills, right? So entrepreneurship can do two things. It can help to personally make you happy, but it can also make sure that you have enough money to not have to worry about money, yeah? And to be able to pay your bills and all the rest of it. You may not become a multi-gazillionaire, but you can sustain yourself, you can look after your family, doing something that you love, which to me will get you closer to being happier for longer periods of time.
Awesome. Okay. So what are your personal thoughts about failure?
So one of the most impactful lessons that I personally ever did when we first started was at a primary school in Watford, and I did a class on failure. And it was when I took failure and turned it into the acronym First Attempt in Learning. And I showed the kids, they were about 9 years old. I showed them this award-winning animation. It was about this little boy who was trying to create a plane that would like really fly. And he kept trying to get the wings to work and get the right, get it off the right with, the wind underneath the wings, and he couldn't. And then this little pilot came out of the sky and showed him how to, make the plane and all the rest of it. And, it showed him failing and failing and failing. And then all of a sudden, his little model plane flew. And it was a story of, actually each time the plane failed to fly, there was a learning event there. There was a learning moment, right?
Feedback, right?
And each one of those learning moments got him to the plane flying. At the end of watching that, it was like a 6-minute thing. I got the kids to just draw, like on a A1 piece of paper, like a montage about that animation and the word failed. And the teacher said it was the most amazing lesson she'd ever watched, because in school failure is bad, right? But what I was saying to them is, no, failing means that you're learning. Yeah. And so and I truly believe that, and I embody that, because I fail all the time. Right. So when people congratulate me and say, oh, Julian, we saw you won this award or this thing or this, accreditation or this nomination, whatever. What they don't know is for everything that they see me win publicly, I've had 10 things that haven't gone well, right? But I genuinely, and I'm human, in the moment of receiving that bad news, it does, of course it bothers me, right? Sometimes I'm like, oh man, I was really hoping for this one. But shortly after, I think to myself, right, what can I learn from this to improve? Because I want to go again. I'm not going anywhere, right? So I'm going to do this again. But what is it that I need to learn? And I think for me, and again, this is from the tech startup thing, is to say, fail fast and fail forward, right? So it's easier to fail with £100 than £100,000. It's better to fail in 6 months than 6 years. So if you're going to fail, let's get it out of the way quickly, cheaply. Let's see what we can learn. Let's rinse and repeat and keep going. It does take some resilience, though, to be able to do that, which is the thing that the tech community sometimes forgets, right? But for kids, it's about how do we build that resilience so that when they do fail, it's okay. And it's just about having a supportive mechanism as they go through that journey.
I love what you said there. I mean, I always say to my clients that I work with that failure and success are two sides of the same coin. That, and my mantra is actually fail fast, fail early. Same thing, rather than spending $1 million, let's spend 100K, or like you said, rather than spending a couple thousand, let me spend 100. Let me work out quickly and find out actually this is a flawed idea. Let me find out after 6 months rather than 6 years. I've mortgaged the house, everything's like, right? No, we don't want to go down that route. We want to be able to do that quite early. And here's also the analogy that I typically use when I'm working with clients, helping them to understand that concept. Because you're right, schooling, society has taught many people that failure is bad. But the example that I typically give is, think about children, right? I've got 3 boys, and I say none of them walked from day one. It wasn't a case of that they took their first step and that was it. They'll start walking. Imagine if we treated our children like that. Right, when the child's about to take the first step, come on, take that first step. Take that. God, oh no, you fell over. It's never gonna work. You're a failure. We don't do that. We keep encouraging them, and then they learn, and then they eventually get to the age where they won't stop walking or running, even if you tell them to. It's like, so that is all part of the journey. We have to fail to learn, and to me, failure takes on a whole different meaning depending on the mindset that we have approach it with. It's all part of the learning cycle. If I don't know it, I need to know it, which means I ain't gonna get it right. And like you, I pride myself on, I failed many times, and I hope I continue to fail many times, because it's in failure that we find success, especially when you're innovating, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So you run an organization, I think you've touched on it a couple of times, Ultra Education. Tell us a bit more about that. What does it do?
So Ultra Education is a social enterprise which is designed to teach entrepreneurship to kids from 7 years old, from disadvantaged backgrounds, mainly from the Black community. And we use it as a way to transform their lives and to increase their life chances.
So I'm heavily into business models as well. You've just mentioned a form of business model, social enterprise. Do you want to expand quickly just for some of the listeners who might not be familiar with what it really means? Sure.
So in a normal enterprise, the driver and the KPI, the North Star, the thing that a normal business will be going for is turnover and profit. That's what you try to do. You try to make money. You're selling a product or service. You're really trying to make money and make more money. that's how you would typically measure success in a for-profit organization, in a normal enterprise. With a social enterprise, the profit is also impact. So yes, you want to make money, you want to be able to be sustainable, you want to be able to grow, but actually one of the key metrics, in fact, the North Star, the key objective of a social enterprise is to help their target beneficiary. So for some people, that's the homeless. For some people, that's women. For some people, that's the disabled. For some people, it's children. For some people, it's unemployed young people. For us, it's children and teens between 7 and 18. And some people use sport. Some people focus on mental health. We focus on using entrepreneurship as a way to improve the lives of those who wouldn't typically have access to entrepreneurial education and opportunity.
And social enterprises are very much heavy on solving global or local problems, right? About providing solutions. Spot on. Okay, yep, go on, carry on, please. So yeah, you're telling us a bit more. Thank you for
explaining. So for me, when I as an entrepreneur, it dawned on me relatively quickly that just generating revenue and profit wasn't fulfilling to me. It's the reason why when you see really successful people who made lots of money or celebrities, they spend a lot of their time giving back. The reason why is because money doesn't fulfill them. And again, it's one of those lies that kids are told, right? You make all this money, you'll be happy and stuff like that. What actually happens is people who end up doing really well later on in life, they turn towards a cause that they can power because they realize that human beings are built to find meaning through purpose, and purpose is really another way of saying you're helping someone or something. You're doing something to improve, because on a very philosophical level, human beings shouldn't just be here to eat away at the Earth's resources, right? Otherwise, what's the point? That's the definition of a parasite, yeah? Human beings should be here to solve the world's problems. That's what we should be here for. Otherwise, what's our purpose? What's the function of a human being on the planet Earth? So for me, that translates into social entrepreneurs, as you very well said, solving local or global problems. I think for me, what excites me, and the reason why I'm so driven by what I do, is because I believe that it's not charities any longer that can most effectively solve the problems. It is entrepreneurs, right? Because entrepreneurs see things very differently. They are driven in a very different way, and they are problem, solution focused and orientated. And so I cannot wait for the day, and this is happening across the board, where entrepreneurs point towards the problems around the world, whether it's water, poverty, hunger, environment, education. Entrepreneurs, the only thing that entrepreneurs haven't yet really applied themselves to is things which, for me, affect the Black community in a real way. They haven't, charities have done it, but not real thoroughbred entrepreneurs haven't said, we're going to apply design thinking to knife crime, to stop and search, to the disproportionate number of young Black boys in prison. That hasn't been done yet, and I'd love to do it, but I can't do everything, right?
Of course, I appreciate that.
So for me, this is why entrepreneurship for me is so important, because if entrepreneurship can be used to solve, buying things more quickly with one-click shopping, or getting a cab more quickly, right, or payments and things like that, if it can change the way we do all of that, change the way we digest content, interact with each other, technologies that will connect us on a video platform like this, then we can point it towards problems that are impacting people's lives in a very, very serious way.
And hopefully you've touched on a couple of things there which really kind of resonated with me there, and hopefully we'll have enough time to touch on them. Ultra education. So, and I'll cut you at that point when I was asking you to explain what a social enterprise is. What is ultra education? Who's your target audience? What are the outcomes that you're aiming for with it?
Sure. So again, we're an education company that seeks to make education ultra. Ultra is really the Latin word to go beyond. And for us, it's about going beyond academics, going beyond academic achievement, and actually the potential of a child or a young person, right? Now, people can tap into the potential of a human being through sport, through music, through drama, through creative industries, and all the rest of it. For me, we're using entrepreneurship as the vehicle to tap into the potential of people, right? But the difference is we're starting with kids.
Right.
So any successful entrepreneur will tell you that their personal development journey has been huge, and entrepreneurship's powered that. All I'm saying is let's start that younger. And the reason why we start it younger is because the life chances of lots of children around the UK are lower than the average. And often it's because of social class, it's because of geography, it's because of race. And very pointed towards that are Black children and teens, right? They're disproportionately affected by a number of societal issues. And for me, really what I'm doing is trying to reverse engineer what should have been a statistic for me. So statistically, I shouldn't have achieved half of the things that I've achieved in my life. I just, according to the stats. So I've blown out the stats by maybe 10 or 20x. And so some people say, well, that's lucky or whatever. I know it wasn't luck. I know it was hard work. I wasn't born with any special set of skills. Nobody sprinkled pixie dust on me when I was born. I was born in a very, very an area of disadvantage. I had all of the usual issues, but I believe that entrepreneurship gave me that edge. I believe entrepreneurship was a thing that propelled me to develop the mindset and the skill set that has helped me to level up, right? And I just want the same. That shouldn't have been a mistake for me, is the point. I shouldn't have stumbled on it. This should be something that everybody can access, because as much as if we look at someone like a Marcus Rashford or a Lewis Hamilton, their talent is God-given, right? It's extraordinary, yeah. So for and when Lewis Hamilton will say, we could achieve this, the fact is, to become an F1 driver, maybe there's 100 people in the world that could do what Lewis Hamilton does. Maybe there's 1,000 people in the country that can do what Marcus Rashford does. But there are millions who can do what I do. Millions, right? So what I'm saying is entrepreneurship, when we're selling young people, you could be an actor and you could be like a movie star, or you could be a footballer. We know that statistically, the chances are quite low, right? The chances, anyone in football knows, right, that statistically, if you get to the Premiership, it's low. Anyone who's a successful actor will tell you to get to that point, statistically, it's quite low. I'm not saying kids shouldn't go for those things, go for them, but what I am saying is that statistically, it's far easier to become a successful entrepreneur than it is to attain the things that are pushed on kids. Let's have a balance of what's being pushed on them. Push being an F1 driver, a baller, an actor. Also, let's push being an entrepreneur. Let's push being in tech. Let's push all of these other things, right? Which statistically are easier to obtain than the things which aren't, because it just seems like it feels like it's a trap. It feels like they're pointed towards those things, knowing that they're less likely to get them than the things that they're more likely to get, right? So, that's my kind of little rant, because, I just think that the other option, because you go from being an F1 driver or baller all the way down to working in retail and construction, there's no bit in the middle, right? It's not as if they say, well, you can be an F1 driver, you could be a footballer, you can be in the NBA, and then you could have a high-paying career, or you could be a top lawyer. It goes all the way down to, you're probably going to work in construction, you're probably going to work in retail, you're going to have a low wage. That's kind of where it drops. There's no middle ground, right? And for me, that's the thing that really bothers me, and again, the availability of entrepreneurship has never been greater than it is now. But the access to entrepreneurial education doesn't seem to get to the people it should.
So I think you've really touched on some really key points there, especially in regards to young people. And I know we've been talking a lot about tech as well. And a lot of young children, I mean, they've grown up around tech. That's what they know, right? That's their reality. So it makes sense, especially in my personal opinion, experience, tech is an enabler. And so it reduces the barriers to entry, especially when you start looking at things like the cloud, right? You no longer need to purchase expensive servers for less than for a couple of pounds a month. You could be, renting storage to run your business and all those type of things. So the barriers to entry are much lower. Children are already familiar with tech, so it makes sense. And yeah, there's so many opportunities, especially now that we live in a global village where businesses can be on 24/7 in every country, anywhere in the world, just through the power of the internet. It provides many options. Within your organization, Ultra Education, maybe give us 2 examples of some successful teenage businesses that have come out of the work that you're doing.
So this young boy who's been with us for a few years called Amari McQueen. He's 11 years old. He's been the world's first vegan restaurateur. He's currently got his own TV show.
Say that again. How old? And he's the first world what?
Right. So 11 years old. His name is Amari McQueen. He's the world's first vegan restaurateur. He was given a pop-up restaurant at Box Park. He's been featured on Sky News, ITV, BBC. He's currently got his own TV show on the BBC right now, as we speak, every Sunday morning at 9:30. And he's done extremely well. He's a kind of a shining example of what's possible when you solve a problem, you do something you're passionate about, you get a lot of support. He's one example. Another one of our examples is Alex, who started with us when he was 14, he's now 16. He fell in love with the bartering and trading. He started selling on Amazon. He then found the drop shipping business model quite early. And at his height, he was turning over 30K a month on using the drop shipping model. And
how did it?
He's now 16. He started when he was 14. He actually started trading on Amazon when he was 11 or 12. And during the pandemic, he's been delivering a workshop over Zoom to a lot of our young entrepreneurs called The Power of Online Marketing. And, we're talking audiences of 60, 70 kids at a time, all under the age of kind of 16. And so, those are just 2 of the examples of a younger kid and an older teen that have just done really, really well.
Well, I want to say congratulations to you and your organization. I mean, that to me is amazing. We hear so much about young children, and a lot of the time it focuses on the negative things. Whereas what we don't seem to hear is a lot more of these type of stories, which are in many ways are inspirational. That these young children are making the sacrifices, the investments required to build themselves up. Because let's face it, to be successful in business, it's about self. You've got to be able to build this up. You've got to build up resilience. You've got to build up this in order to succeed out there. It's not the other way around, right? And so for them to be doing that at a young age, to me, that's awesome. Which also begs the thing that I also say as well. We speak a lot about some of the children that we see getting caught up in stuff. But many of them demonstrate the entrepreneurial spirit as well, right? They buy, they sell. They know the difference between profit and loss. How to protect their own interests.
Yeah, and I guess, but the thing is this is the social construct, and in America they call it the trap, and it's actually because that the options are limited. So if you say to young people, look, you need to reach for the stars and you need to be the best you can be and all the rest of it, but then you don't give them mechanisms to exercise that, they'll find their own ways to do it, right? And that's what's playing out. I remember about 6 or 7 years ago, I was asked to give a talk at London Probation in Victoria. And it was because, in our work, we work with and mentor lots of youth offenders and young people on probation and things like that. And the person speaking before me was a police officer of the initiative at the time which was, Operation whatever it might be, to kind of lock down on drug crime and stuff. And he stood up there and he said, yeah, there was a young gang in South London, and we confiscated, or we managed to arrest £2 million from them. Yeah. And I was waiting for the applause. I was waiting for someone to give them a round of applause, or for him to say, you know what, we're now supporting them and retraining them and helping them learn how to transfer their skills into. Of course, he didn't say that. He just locked them up. And what I wanted to say is that I know tech startups who have been given 10 times that and can't make 10% of that back, right? There were tech startups, and I mean, there was one just recently who famously, they raised a whole bunch of money. It was like a mobile version of a mobile-only content platform. I forgot what they're called now, but they raised an enormous amount of money and they crashed within a year. But yet you've got these so-called uneducated gangs of youth in South London who could generate £2 million, right? And for me, it just seemed like I was sitting there thinking, like, where's the punchline, right? When is Jeremy Beadle going to come out and say, I'm showing my age here, but it made me realize that society has kind of lost the plot. So instead of penalizing that gang, somebody should be taking them into industry and giving them other options, because it should be clear to everybody that they will only exercise the options that are presented to them, right? And if you don't present aspirational and desirable options, young people are going to find them for themselves.
I think you've touched on some really interesting points there, and I look at it from a two-sided approach, which is one, totally 100% agree that without options, these children will go out and create their own options, whether society thinks it's right or wrong. I believe that there's a certain aspect of society which intentionally limits the options so that they have very few options to choose from. Also, going back to what you spoke about there, and sometimes when I say this, for some people it doesn't go down too well, but I'm going to say it anyway, that as a community, there's some responsibility on us. It goes back to what you're talking about, social enterprises and entrepreneurship. If we are not creating the jobs for our young youth to step into, if we're not creating the infrastructure and abilities for us to help them to take what they clearly have as skill sets and use it in a positive way, when they go out and create their own options because they feel limited in the options, then rather we should be supporting them rather than kind of demonizing them and saying, yeah, look at you, look at you, look at you. And I seriously feel that as a community, and obviously this doesn't mean every single person, but as a collective, there's some ownership on us, right?
No, I couldn't agree more. And, look, I've got friends of mine who, they make six figures. They're great. They're good. They wouldn't think about employing a young black man or woman. The thought wouldn't cross their mind, right? And it's not because they're bad people. It's just because, it's probably been too difficult for them to achieve what they've done. And human beings, they want to protect, they want to protect their success. They want to, but there's also a fear mechanism, right? So they will kind of devolve the responsibility of the ills of society on the government, on schools, whatever it might be, and then complain when those things don't work. But they won't necessarily do anything about it themselves either. And I get that. Again, it's a protective mechanism. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of misunderstanding. They perhaps don't know it. They have to come out of their comfort zone. All the rest of it, right? But it doesn't change the fact that there are enough black professionals and business people and all the rest of it in the UK to make a bigger dent on creating opportunities for young people. There just is. But for lots of reasons that, again, I completely understand, we're not meeting that need. Yeah, we're just not. And sometimes I think that it will take a few of us to create enough momentum to maybe encourage others. And or we've got to work with, you know, other communities maybe who have similar problems that want to help, and we rise with the tide. You know, there isn't going to be a one size fits all answer to this. There's going to be a number of different ways that we need to approach this problem until we find something that works. It's a little bit like the tech problem, right? So how can we fail early on this, right? And how can we learn and iterate? And that's why I say it's exciting for me for entrepreneurs to take these approaches and apply them to social problems.
Awesome. I think you've really hit some of the key aspects of it. And personally, for me, I'm willing to work with anybody, any community. For me, it's not so much a black and white thing in terms of working to solve what I perceive to be some of the social ills that affect the black community. It's not a case of excluding anybody else from that. I have to say, in my life, over time, I have been helped by black people, white people, Asian people, all type of people, and I'm more of a people person. I recognize that people, you know, people's values, drives are not necessarily always determined by this exterior, right? So for me, it's about working to who care enough to solve the problems that we are facing, as opposed to seeing back. Here's another number that I throw out nearly on every show. I don't know if you know it, but the approximate annual spend of the UK black community is, how much do you think it is?
I should know this because I follow Black Pound Day.
It's a number.
Yeah, I can't remember the figure.
30 billion. That's our consumer spend, they reckon, a year. Also, the stats show from the recent poverty survey that they did, 50% of black families are living below the poverty line, which means the rest of that 30 billion is coming from the rest of the 50% of the community. So there's money there. And like you said, hopefully these platforms and other stuff that's happening in the community that are highlighting some of those challenges will help us all as individuals to look to self, to see what small things we can do to make a difference, whether that's social enterprises, whether it's creating businesses, whatever, and start thinking beyond our immediate needs, like you said, right, as human beings, because I think that's how we evolve. We've been talking a bit about tech, and as we start wrapping up, so we are now in the fourth industrial revolution. Let me quickly share this with some of the listeners out there. I think I shared this last week, but I didn't have my audio on. So the fourth industrial revolution. So the first industrial revolution was about steam and powered engines and stuff. Then we went into the revolution, the second one, which was all about electricity and how do you start generating power. So that's like wind turbine and all those type of things to generate what was kind of the industrial revolution in terms of factories and all that type of stuff. Then we went into the computing phase, which we've kind of, in many ways, have come out of. So that's the introduction of things like devices, tech devices, laptops, computers. And now we're into something that's really, from my view, is very interesting. It also provides opportunities for leapfrogging. This is when we start talking about biotech, we start talking about agri-tech, we start talking about the various technologies which are combining. We start talking about 5G, cloud, we start talking about Internet of Things. All of these technologies, how they're combining and changing the way that we live, how we work, and also how we socialize. So in your opinion, because I know you come from a tech background as well, and you're very much interested in tech, how do you see, or what opportunities and threats do you see that this fourth industrial revolution and the emergence of new technologies, which are kind of exponentially growing, because as new technologies collide, they create new technologies, etc., etc. How do you see what opportunities and threats that might potentially present to small to medium-sized enterprises, especially in the Black community?
So I mean, I'm really glad you touched on this, because I've been doing workshops and delivering keynote speeches at a number of events, specifically on the future of work and the fourth industrial revolution and the work that the World Economic Forum has produced on the future of jobs. And as you know, just recently, they published an updated version of the Future of Jobs report in August, which was in response to COVID-19, bringing the fourth industrial revolution forward. And I've been talking about this for a very long time, because when we talk about the employability skills of young people, they are going into the future of jobs, right? So when we're telling kids, oh, you could be a lorry driver or a this or a that, you could work. No, you're not, right? None of those jobs are going to exist, right? So for me, it's a real pain point because I go into education and I hear educators pointing toward jobs which I know aren't going to exist anymore, right? So for me, on the other side of that coin, entrepreneurs are the ones powering the fourth industrial revolution. We're the ones coming up with the solutions and leveraging the tech. The technologists will be coming up with the technologies, but it's the entrepreneurs that will leverage those technologies and turn them into things that we will exercise in our daily lives. And for me, that's where children and young people need to be focused. And just recently, I've been working with data scientists, blockchain experts on how you can explain data science to a 9-year-old, right? And it's actually a fun exercise, right? And
Okay.
how do you turn that into a story? How do you turn it into a game? Because at the moment, right, when we say IoT, AR, VR, blockchain, crypto, AI, machine learning, I mean, most adults don't know what that stuff means, right? But for me, who's telling this to because the kids are going to be the ones that are going to inherit the fourth industrial revolution in the main. Who's teaching them about this stuff? So we're just letting them, walk into a brick wall on this stuff, right? So for me, the main challenges and opportunities exist with children and young people. That's my focus. But to answer your question, this now means for small businesses that you need to adapt or die. It's as simple as that. Adapt or die. This isn't something that's coming in another lifetime. It's not happening in another, dimension or another universe. This is happening now, right? And it's going to happen at speed. So if you, as a small business, and for me, this is actually with the opportunities, because Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba and AliExpress, said that what all of these technologies will enable humans to do is to spend more time doing things that they love, creative works, desirable, activities and outputs, stuff that, the kind of the human spirit and the human ingenuity and creativity isn't something that any of these technologies are going to be able to replicate, not right now anyway. And actually, that's the stuff that humans enjoy doing the most. So let's do more of that, because, and also Jack Ma will say that it means that we won't have to work as much as we work. We won't have to work the number of hours, right? So even in my organization, we're using automation tools like Zapier and other things to automate processes that are sitting in our organization, so that the people that are working in the team can do something more interesting but more meaningful, right? Something more meaningful, something that's actually going to keep them more interested, develop them as humans, and impact the kid that we're working with. So it's not just tech for tech's sake, right? So I think for me, the opportunity for small businesses is actually to help them adapt more quickly. Adopting new technology can help make their workflow easier and enable them to work on new ideas or facets of the business that they perhaps have. You don't, and you just bury your head in the sand, then your business will die. Another business who was adopting this stuff will take it over, right? We're looking at Amazon. Amazon is eating everyone's food, right? Jeff Bezos said the three things which they're focusing on is price, delivery, and selection, right? Those are the three things that Jeff Bezos says humans will always respond to that. So, for most people, when they think about buying stuff, they're thinking of Amazon because they know it's going to come today or the next day. They're going to get a bloody good price for it, and they'll probably be able to find it on that platform, right?
And let me just also throw in another factor, and it's risk-free. If it doesn't work and I don't like it, I get to send it back at no cost.
So if you don't adapt to what's going on around you, for me, the challenge is you'll die, but the opportunity is that you can serve a niche more effectively. Because as you know, lots of businesses start and actually do really well serving a micro niche. Yeah, find a niche audience, and you may not IPO, but you can probably have a bloody good business serving a small niche really, really well. Yeah, And that's an absolutely brilliant thing to do. If that's where you need to start, then that's a very good place to start. And the reason I'm suggesting that is because you will probably have insights into that niche that an Amazon may not have, right? Or another big company may not have. So you'll be able to compete, right? It's more difficult to compete if you say, I'm gonna start a fashion company. Now you're in competition with Pretty Little Thing on Boohoo and all of those Wish and Shein. You're not gonna beat those guys, right? Those guys are monsters of what they do, right? So, you've got to kind of chunk down, I think. But that should make it more interesting. It should make it more interesting. It should make it more focused and more targeted. But again, can't bury your head in the sand. If you don't adapt, you will die.
Totally agree on that one, and it's important identifying your segment. And I also think that even in that, there's an opportunity. So rather than trying to take on something like Amazon or the Boohoo's, how do you create something which is actually desirable to them, so they want to acquire you? So your exit strategy is actually, how do I build something which I can actually sell on in a couple of years' time or a few years' time for a few million, and then take that money and reinvest it in some of the other things that I want to do? Sometimes that's part of the stepping stone. I think you touched on some really key points there, which just want to go back to this for some of the listeners, just to put it into context. So when you hear Julian talking about, sending children into jobs which no longer exist. So, for example, if you look at call agents and online agents, a lot of them have been replaced by bots nowadays. Those are people's jobs that were going, right? Technology. In a lot of organizations that I work with, we look at how do we introduce things like testing automation and DevOps pipelines. So this is all just automated ways of pushing code into life. That's loads of people's jobs who used to do the manual work around that. The release managers, the manual testers, all of that, they're going to be out of jobs. So there's lots of industries that you're going to be seeing, which is slowly and actually going to be more rapidly, especially with what we see with COVID, are going to be moving towards how do they automate? How do they utilize technology? Which means individuals will be out of jobs. But going back to what Julian was saying, a lot of the things that we're seeing, if we're still pushing our children about jobs, we're stuck in the second industrial revolution / third industrial revolution. That was our parents' generation. Go out, get a job. Go out, get a job. That now is just far moving. Get a job you could hold for life. You'd be lucky if you find a job that you can hold for 5 years nowadays, let alone for life, right? Third industrial revolution is where people like myself started getting involved in technology and information systems, and then you start having people involved as IT and contractors, which has been great. But also that industry is changing now, because a lot of the great work we've done is to build technology which now is replacing human beings. And now you're moving into, like we said, into the area. A lot of our children play around with this technology already. That's why we should start thinking about how do we actually get them into understanding this technology, being able to use this technology to create solutions or to create opportunities for themselves, because we are in the knowledge age as well. We're in the age where it's not so much we get paid for our skill sets, but more so much the knowledge that we bring. And that's going to be, especially what we see with COVID, that's going to be the trajectory. And it's going to be a very sharp trajectory over the next few years. So with that in mind, as we start wrapping up, Julian, how do people who are now thinking, okay, how do I now start preparing my young children for success in the future based on the ways that the world is changing? How could they reach out to you, get their children on some of your programs, get, on some of the award-winning stuff that you're doing? How can I do that?
Well, the great news is that we have a bunch of programs that are always running. We've got programs for the younger kids. We've got programs for the mid and older age teens. They're all free. They run weekly, twice a week for the younger ones, once a week for the teens. If you go to any of our social media platforms, you look up Ultra Education or myself, the Entrepreneur, on Instagram, on Twitter, you won't have to scroll too far to find some details about our programs. You can go to our website, ultra.education, and just sign up. You can sign up on the Eventbrite. You'll get the details. Everything's on Zoom, as I'm sure you know. And your kids can try it out, take part. You can speak to our facilitators. They'll speak back. You'll see other kids there. Speak to other parents. It's a really great experience. I mean, I'll give you, a really nice story. There was one of the kids yesterday. Hope he won't mind me letting his idea out of the box. I mean, he must be 9 years old, right? And he said that his business idea is to open up a games arcade, right? And I thought, wow, what an amazing idea. And he was talking about, like, you know, classic games like, you know, Street Fighter and
Man and all of that stuff.
and stuff like that, right? He wants to open up an arcade. And I thought, wow, like, it brings gaming, it brings an outdoor experience, it's retro, it's the kind of thing parents will bring their kids to because they used to do it. And he's 9 years old, right?
But here's the thing about that, Julian.
My wife, one of our science teacher, that it's just a brilliant idea, and it's coming from a 9-year-old kid. And you know, but for us, it's less about, okay, well, how are you gonna get the money and how are you gonna do that? Forget all of that. Let's indulge his ambition for a minute, right? Let's enjoy it, let's indulge it, and let's just do stuff. If he starts with one arcade machine and he's got to save for a year, I don't care. That's a good start, and then he can build up. But you know, it's just, we get ideas like that all the time. You know, just amazing ideas, and you know, there isn't a parent who wouldn't consider their kids creative, and you know, if they want to solve problems, they can. And I think, you know, what we do is just provide them with an environment where we can help to guide them to take the thing that they're passionate about and wrap a business model around it that they can play with and explore.
Awesome. So there you go, get it, guys. So there's the website, ultra.education. And then also you can find Julian on Instagram, the Ultrapreneur. So just as we wrap up now with the last question, what one piece of advice would you give to people who are watching right now who are considering starting a business?
The $1 million question, eh?
There you go.
Well, thankfully, I get this question in real life from people around me all the time. And assuming, you know, if people have full-time jobs and full-time commitments, then I would say that they should take the entrepreneurial approach, and that is create a prototype of the business idea that you want to get out in the market. Just create the first version of it. Doesn't have to be perfect. You know, if you want to be an author, write the first chapter. If you want to start a YouTube channel, write the first script, right? If you want to, you know, do sports therapy, whatever it is you want to do, just start small. Just start small. If you've only got 1 hour a week, start with that 1 hour a week, but do something, right? Don't do nothing, because the more you do, it'll build your confidence. It'll start answering some unknowns and some known unknowns, but it'll get you closer to the point where you can see and hold the reality of what that idea is. What I would say though is, for most adults, they procrastinate, not because they're lazy, but because they're afraid. It does take courage, it does take bravery to step out of a comfortable, 9 to 5. And I can't remember who it was that said it, but they say that a paycheck is the price you pay for not seeing your dreams come true, or something like that, right? That's the thing that's really holding you back. Find someone who you can become accountable to, right? A friend, a partner, the internet. Go on Facebook and say, look, I'm gonna write my first chapter by this time next week. If I don't get it, if I don't show you guys, you can all throw stuff at me on Facebook, right? But again, just start small, and just get it going. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then once you've got something that's meaningful, just something, try and sell it. Try and exchange that for money, because then you'll know whether or not there's enough value in it for someone to exchange that hard-earned cash for it. And in the busy market that we have today, take a skill that you have or skill that you want to acquire and point it towards a very specific problem that you can solve. Don't try and boil the ocean. Don't try and do everything. It's difficult to compete. Find something that either is a very specialized skill that you have, or a specialized experience that you have, or a niche audience that you think you can serve because you have the lived experience. Find something that's different. Find something that's unique, and start there. And once you've got going, don't let go. Once you've found your way in, hold on to it for dear life. Don't let go, and keep iterating, keep scrubbing away at that. Because one thing that I will tell you for free, and that is, people respect determination and hard work. They don't expect things to be perfect. They don't expect you to get it right all the time. But people will give you the time of day. They will give you an audience. They will give you a contract. They will give you a chance if they see that you are really about that life, whatever it is you say you're going to do, you show up, you do it, you try your best, you make mistakes, you fix them. People respond really well to that because it's inspiring. People do want to support, but you've got to show them that that is something that you really, really want to do. And so for me, in a nutshell, I would say start small but start quickly.
Awesome, thank you. I think that's some really, really powerful advice. Then I like what you wrapped it up there with, which is really about integrity, right? It's about being consistent and showing up. And it's like we see many times with many investors. A lot of the times, investors are investing in the individual. It's like, yeah, it's a great idea, but who's the individual behind it? What's their character? Or actually, it's an average idea, but based on their character, I think I could work with them to make this a great idea. But this is actually, that's a great idea, but that person, nah, I can't work with them. So you know what? I'm gonna let that one go. And yeah, I hear you. There's the stuff that we know. There's the stuff that we know we don't know. There's the stuff that we don't know we know. And then there's always those unknown unknowns. And really, the journey of entrepreneurship, for the most part, is to start understanding, as maybe as a first starting point, is the unknown unknowns, because usually those are the things that could destabilize you, or actually sometimes that's where the gold lies. That's the opportunity. It's like, didn't get it. That's the whole lean startup model. How do we pivot and persevere? How do we run experiments to actually pull out what we don't know, so we can say, oh, that, okay, I didn't know that. Okay, that's good. Or, oh, didn't know that. I'll leave that one. I'm going that way. Right? How do you find your way through that? Navigate it. Awesome. So once again, here's Julian's website. Get over there, ultra.education, and then you can find Julian on the Ultrapreneur. And once again, so you can join the CirQulate Facebook group. So just type in CirQulate. You can follow CirQulate on Insta. So that's CirQulate the Black Pound. And you can also get us on YouTube, which is CirQulate, where this video will also be uploaded afterwards, but it's streaming live there right now. So Julian, all that's remained left now is to say thank you ever so much for taking the time out. We've run a bit longer than usual, but that's a demonstration of the value that you've offered, that you've given to the listeners. Want to commend you on the work that you're doing in the community. So well done to you for that. And all that's left for me to do now is to wish you an abundant success in all that you're doing. And we look forward to, seeing and following your journey, and also the journey of those young people who you're inspiring and showing them new possibilities. So once again, thank you ever so much. And then to all our listeners, thank you for joining us, or for anybody who's watching live or about watching it right now. Join next week, Tuesday, 8 p.m., where we'll have another guest on the show. And next week, we're going to be looking at how to deal with depression and, the challenges mentally that go along with that. So please do not miss that. Once again, Julian, thanks a lot and have a good evening. And to all our listeners out there, thanks a lot once again and have an awesome evening. Alicia Koya, Biz Talk. See you soon.